noticed that whenever they try to market a survival horror game, you see a lot of the shooting and stuff like that, which is funny because then you actually get to the game and you realize there isn't as much as you would think of it in there. Anyway, good evening, folks. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to go live again this week. Star is having her birthday party tonight, so I just wanted to make sure that I had something ready to go in case it didn't make it back in time. And tonight we are playing Silent Hill 2, and joining me for this one is, of course, my good friend Steffi, the MLG Panda.
People of the future.
Alright, so I talked a little bit about this when I was doing my Resident Evil 2 video, Steffi, and basically talking about how I sort of started playing a lot of the classic survival horror games. And I mentioned that when I was doing those, I was sort of forcing myself to because, I didn't like the tank controls, I didn't like the fixed camera angles, it just didn't vibe with me the way I think it was supposed to. But that was also kind of a good thing that I had you around at the time. This was around the time when we were rooming together, and I wanted to play these games, and you were always a little afraid of some of them, so you wanted someone to play them for you. So we'd often end up playing these games together. And I think out of all the ones we played together, I think Silent Hill 2 was the one we definitely enjoyed the most, wouldn't you say?
Yes, this one was so much fun. It was also scary too, but it was exciting.
Yeah. And that we loved this one so much that we played it twice, and I'm sure if the remake actually ends up delivering, I pray to life and it delivers, we'll probably end up playing through that one as well. But because of that, it seemed only right that I have you on the stream with me for this one, Steph. So
Yes.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here for this one.
Okay, so considering we played this one a bunch, Steffi, what do you know about Silent Hill 2? Do you remember all my rantings about it as we played?
Definitely there were some issues with the controls, I believe. The button that was for the map was like in a weird place and that kept screwing you up. The tank controls were giving you some trouble.
I was more referring to the development, Steffi.
Oh. Well, let's see. I know there was wasn't it after this one that Team Silent disbanded, I think?
Sort of. So, after Silent Hill came out, it was actually something of a surprise success for Konami. They put the game into production basically to try and make a game that could compete with Resident Evil, take advantage of the boom in survival horror genre at the time. But they decided, for whatever reason, to put their bad company on it, which was Team Silent, a team consisting of employees that just didn't fit in at Konami. I guess you could say it was just a team of Kojimas, as it were. Mm-hmm. But because of that, they ended up just kind of doing their own thing, and eventually Konami just threw up their hands and said, all right, can't work with you guys just do whatever you want. And that ended up being for the best because without anyone restraining their creativity or trying to guide them, they were actually able to craft something really special with the first Silent Hill. And usually it's around this time, Steffi, that studios come in, they realize they have a hit on their hand, they try to play a more active role in development to make sure it goes down the correct way of development so that you keep those good numbers going. But they didn't do that with Silent Hill 2. Instead, they actually did what any studio should do. Alright, you guys nailed this first game, here's a ton of money. Anything you guys need, just let us know. Just do it again. And you know what? That ended up working out even better because Silent Hill 2, it was even more well received than the first Silent Hill game. It sold better. It got very high marks from critics at the time. it was just a huge, huge game for the time. And even today, it's still highly regarded as one of the all time great games in the survival horror genre. So, in a lot of ways, it was just kind of a perfect storm of development, Steffi. You had a team of passionate developers who all believed in what they were doing and united in their vision. You had a studio that had faith in the project and were willing to support it. And you had an active fan base excited for the next game. I mean, how many times do you hear about that in the gaming industry? Steffi?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I've lost you again.
You cut out for just a second. I think you said, "Do you agree?" at the end, and that was the part that cut out.
Well, the part that was probably cut out was me saying, how often do you hear about something like that happen in the industry? Just everything going right with development.
Like, never.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that was the last time it happened with the series. You were talking about how after Silent Hill 2, Team Silent disbanded. And while that's not exactly what happened for Silent Hill 3 and to a lesser extent Silent Hill 4, Konami started taking a more active role in development, and they definitely steered the games in the wrong direction to the point where sales took a dip, and rather than acknowledge that their micromanaging of the independent minded Team Silence is likely the cause of what happened, they instead laying the blame entirely on Team Silence, disbanded the team, and then handed Silent Hill off to whatever developer was willing to work on the cheap.
Hmm.
Which is why a lot of people are also concerned about the Silent Hill 2 remake that's coming out, because rather than, do it internally, they're instead handed it off to the Bloomberg team, who are really only known for a game called Layers of Fear, which is just a walking simulator. It's a horror game, but it's not the same kind of game as Silent Hill in any stretch of the imagination. As I'm said, I'm really praying that they don't screw up that remake, because another thing a lot of people don't realize about Silent Hill 2 is that it's also lost media. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it, but Konami somehow lost the source code to this game. And because of that, the only way you can play Silent Hill today is if you just happen to have a physical copy of it. Like, I'm playing on the PS2 here, and this is just one of those games that I refuse to sell because, it's the only way I have to play it. I don't want to lose it. Like, this is a really special game. But anyway, I think I've talked enough, Steffi. You ready to get started here?
Yes, let's get into it.
All right.
I did want to make the comment when watching the trailer for the remake,
Yeah.
it was bugging me like that the graphics were updated, because I feel like part of what makes Silent Hill 2 like so creepy is the PlayStation 2 graphics, especially with the monsters and stuff. Like, you can't quite make out what they are.
I actually do get where you're coming from there, Steffi, and we're going to talk about that as we're playing through the game. Because there's a lot to talk about in regards to the presentation of Silent Hill. But yeah, that's something else I was really concerned about. But I feel like it could definitely be worse, Steffi. Because when I heard that they were doing a remake, I figured they would, try to clean up the presentation, like, present James as more handsome or what have you. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some gameplay footage, like extended gameplay footage, like the first hour of the game or so. And it doesn't look like they're doing that. They're still trying to capture the vibe and horror of the original game. They're just trying to update it with modern gameplay. They're trying to, Resident Evil 2 remake this. It's not going to be like a shot for shot remake.
Okay. I mean, I'm still willing to give it a try. I'm just not sure how well it'll work.
I
Um,
mean, everyone has that concern, Steffi, so we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
so
But,
I'm not able to hear the game.
well, there hasn't been any sound yet.
Okay.
So, can you hear that? Steph,
Yeah.
can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, so the sound is coming in. So, the title screen. I gotta be honest, Steffi, I don't think this one is quite as good as the original game. I feel like the graphic design is just a little overdone, and with the background, it's kind of illegible if it's glowing like that. And, like, I think it's supposed to be water behind it, just doesn't have that same eerie factor that the title screen in the first game had. What do you think?
And I'm like trying to figure out what the things are that are like that's wrapped around the letters. Like it's giving me vibes that I'm gonna be in like a jungle or something.
Yeah, it's not very good graphic design, I would say.
No, it's
Yep.
confusing.
Alright, so just like the first game, you have the option to choose between difficulty settings for your action, which is basically combat and enemies, and your riddles. And I actually tried playing this game, Steffi, with the riddles at normal, and it was actually really tough. I kept having to look up a fact for that.
Well, Jager, you did just set it to normal.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for this hour of gameplay that we have.
All right, just making sure.
And like this right here, this is just a beautiful, beautiful introduction to James as a character. Like with Resident Evil and other games, typically you're playing as some kind of military badass, and in the first Silent Hill, you're playing as, I think it was Harry Mason. It was just kind of an everyman. But here, you see that image of James reflected in that dirty mirror, and he honestly looks really ghastly, like the light cast over his eyes, his pale skin. It just kind of gives you a sense that this isn't necessarily a well man, both physically and mentally. It's one of the most memorable first images in any video game. Wouldn't you agree, Steffi?
Absolutely.
And I love the loading screen too, like with the footsteps. It's very film noir. I love it.
There's a lot to love about this game.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that they've beefed up the presentation too. I mean, this looks leaps and bounds better than the original Silent Hill.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
Well, that's the power of unlimited
I
budget
promised
and
you'd take me
creativity.
in someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you.
Some really good music in this game too.
I got a
It
letter.
can be
Yes.
both haunting, but can also be
Name on the envelope.
soothing as well. Maybe even depressing as well. It's hard to describe.
My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true. That's what I keep telling myself. A dead person can't write a letter. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago. So then, why am I looking for her? Our special place. What could she mean? This whole town was our special place. Does she mean the park on the lake?
Is Silent Hill supposed
spent
to
the whole
be like
day
an American town?
Yeah.
Just the two of us, staring at the water.
It's a little iffy where exactly it would be, but it is supposed to be an American town. They were trying to capture a,
Is she really
you know, a
alive?
western small town.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting for me?
Okay, so we got our narrative hook, which is James Sunderland gets a letter from his wife, Mary, telling him that she's waiting for him at their special place in Silent Hill, which, if you played the first game, you know isn't a good place to be. But there's also sort of a wrinkle in that too, in the fact that Mary is dead, and James knows it. So this is a good narrative hook, I would say, because it establishes why the hell James wants to go to Silent Hill in the first place. But it also adds a nice air of mystery to it too, because, as James so eloquently put it, a dead person can't write a note. So something sinister is already afoot. What was going through your head when we first started playing this game back in the day, Steph?
Was trying to figure out, like... So I was thinking along the lines of, like, is this actually a letter that, like, he got, or did he just, like, imagine the whole thing? And I think at some point I was like, maybe it was Silent Hill itself that sent the letter somehow.
Yeah, it's never really exposited upon as to where the letter came from. The letter is a thing. We have it right here.
Mm-hmm.
But how it came into James' possession is never really elaborated on. And one thing that's important to note about Silent Hill 2 is, even though it is called Silent Hill 2, it's really only a sequel to the first game in the fact that it takes place within the same town as Silent Hill. The game doesn't really go into the origins of the town. The cult is never brought up outside of maybe a few odd mentions here and there. But the beauty of Silent Hill 2 is that it's not necessarily the story of Silent Hill itself. It's more the story of James Sunderland as he makes his way through the town, and the personal horror that it creates for him, which I think you and I both agree, Steffi, is a brilliant concept for a horror video game.
I agree. Like, Resident Evil is cool in the sense that, like, the games are all connected and they show, like, different people experiencing different, like, perspectives of similar events and stuff. But a lot of that horror and mystery gets lost because of that. Where here, this is just its own thing. Like, I played like, you can go into this saying, like, oh, I played the first Silent Hill, it's gonna be cultists again, and then you realize, wait, no, what is happening here? And you really don't know. Like, you can't figure it out.
And you know what? You don't need to figure it out too, because again, the game isn't about Silent Hill. It's not about trying to figure out why is it doing these things? Why is all this weird stuff happening in it? It's more about, you know, James as a character, which is rare for a horror video game, or any work of horror period, because character tends to get neglected, because in most horror stories, they only serve the purposes of being fodder for whatever threat is trying to kill them. But in Silent Hill 2, they actually do manage to tell a character-driven story and still make it a really strong horror game. It's just one of the most brilliant pieces of writing I've ever come across.
I agree.
Okay, so now let's look at the controls. And you saw me trying to flip the camera back there a minute ago. So Silent Hill 2 still uses tank controls, so up moves you forward, down moves you back, and left and right rotates you on an axis. So, and the game still uses the dynamic camera, so at times it's fixed, but other times you can adjust it, like you can flip it back behind James. And playing this game again this past week, Steffi, by myself, I gotta be honest, I came off more as sloppy than dynamic like it did in the original game. And I honestly feel like the tank controls and everything were just kind of a holdover, like, you know, Team Silent sort of being afraid to experiment with the new control system for fear of alienating their still young audience. What do you think?
Oh, I
And I'm not really sure. I'm not the one that played the game. You were the one that played it, even when I watched you. So I can't really, like, I don't have that experience with the controls that you did.
I guess I didn't think about that when I asked you that.
Yeah.
Well, here's something else that we can comment on, which is the voice acting.
Thanks.
So,
But
Yes?
I think you'd better stay away.
listening to this character in particular, you might get the sense that the voice acting still falls into sort of that cheesy style that was common at the time. You know, hiring less than experienced actors to voice these characters. But a lot of people would say that it actually works for Silent Hill 2,
Okay.
because it kind of creates a sense that these characters are unhinged at worst, or not completely there at best. Do you get what they're getting at with that, Steffi? Do you see that?
I'm going to town.
Yes, and I always got that vibe. Like,
I'm looking for.
I don't really know how to
someone.
describe it, but just the way that they're voiced and the things that they say,
Someone
like, it's kind of
very
like
important to me.
at times they're
anything
responding
to
to
do with
James,
you.
but other times when they talk, they're not responding
I'm
to
looking for
him.
my mama.
If that
my
makes
Yeah.
mother.
sense.
Yeah, I get
It's
what
been
you're
so
saying. Like,
long
they're
since
talking
I've
to
seen you.
themselves, or maybe something else that's there. Or maybe they
Yeah.
see James as something else
Thought
completely.
my
You
father
never
and
know.
mother were here, but
Maybe that's a good point.
I can't find them either.
So here's a better question then. Do you think that the voice acting here is intentional?
No, I-
Or is it just bad and it ended up being a happy accident that it worked?
Yeah, you too.
That's a really tough question to answer. And I I really don't know.
Yeah, I can't really answer that question either. So one thing we haven't commented on is the presentation, and I mean, just look at it. I mean, especially compared to the original game, look at how detailed James' character model is, and look at that fog, dude. I mean, that almost looks alive. It's haunting.
I remember you saying something about when they lost the source code for the game, they weren't ever able to recreate that same effect with the fog.
Yeah, so in 2008, no, it had to have been 2010. They attempted, keyword being attempted, to remaster Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. However, by this point, they had lost the source code, and all they had was an incomplete prototype of the game. So, like, most of the game was still there, but certain effects like the fog and everything, it had been completely lost as it wasn't finished. So that's not such a big deal. You get a few of the developers who worked on the old game, get an experienced team who is good at, polishing up code, all that stuff, and you could probably still release it, get it done. But unfortunately, Konami decided to fast track that port, and worse than that, the team they got wasn't really that experienced, so you ended up with a subpar version of the game, per se. And there is something noisy going on here. Huh. It's a chainsaw, Steffi.
Who left a chainsaw there?
I don't know, but I never realized I could get the chainsaw. Oh,
Yeah,
can I
thought
equip
your
this?
first weapon was like a hammer.
Oh man,
Was this
So,
a
like-
new game plus?
okay, we will try that on an enemy, but oh man, I can't believe I've never come across that before. I think this might actually be New Game Plus, Steffi, because I don't think we've ever come across that before, have we? And we've played this game twice.
I feel like we definitely would not have missed that.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I don't think I ever deleted our initial save file, Steffi, but then again, I really don't play Silent Hill 2 a lot, and that does bring us to another good point. While Silent Hill 2 is a really good game, it's not one of those games I find myself replaying again and again, and there are quite a few reasons for that, but the main thing is that, I feel like you really need to be in the right mindset to really enjoy Silent Hill, or any game in the series, really. Like with Resident Evil, like I can basically pick up any game in the series and just have a blast with it, but I need to be in the right mindset for a Silent Hill game. Like, you, you ever have a movie, Steffi, that you acknowledge as really good, but it's not something that you watch frequently despite how good it is?
Trying to think. I have this experience with um certain episodes of TV shows. I'm not sure about movies, but I totally get what you're saying. Like I've got to be like in the right mindset to be able to watch it because it's going to make me feel a certain way.
Yeah, a good example for me would be the Joker movie. Like, I've always said that is a really good movie, but it's not one that I watch a lot because, like, it's something that I just need to be in the proper mindset for. And Silent Hill 2 is very much in that vein, I would say.
Yeah, this game it's really going to mess with you psychologically.
It already is. I don't know if you can hear that, Steffi, or if our viewers can hear it, but it sounds like there's something moving in the fog, and that already puts you on edge because it gives you a sense that there's already something coming from your head.
Oh yeah, do you remember your favorite place in this game? How it has that one weird soundtrack that just is like noises.
Oh, you're talking about the Historical Society, aren't you?
Yes.
Aw, man, that is such a great section of the game. Though, the less we say about that, the better. Really, like, it's kind of hard to really go too in-depth with Silent Hill because so much of the fun of the game is just going into it not really knowing what to expect.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason too why there isn't a lot of replay value because like this is one of those experiences that I wish I could remove from my brain and then experience it for the first time again over and over cuz I mean, we played it more than once and it definitely was fun to go through it again, but it wasn't as exciting as the first time.
Yeah, it definitely is fun to play it a second time around after some time has passed because you can let everything that you learn from the end of the game really sit with you. And that really recontextualizes a lot of different aspects of the game. So, yeah, as we're getting closer to Silent Hill, like, the noises just start to increase. And one theory that I came to while I was at work, like, as I said, Steffi, I've been playing this throughout the week. And given the nature of my job, I have a lot of time to myself to just think about stuff because there's not much else for me to do while the machine runs. And one thought that occurred to me is that compared to the first game, and the third game as well, any other Silent Hill game for that matter, there aren't too many scenes in here where you venture into what fans will refer to as the other world of Silent Hill. Like, there are some sections where you are obviously getting into some very strange stuff, but one thought I had, maybe the entire game takes place in the other world. What do you think about that idea?
That's another I just really don't know. Like I don't know. I feel like parts of James' experience like have to be real.
It's just hard to say. Like,
It really is.
I feel like he really is there in Silent Hill, but what he's experiencing is different because he obviously it differs tremendously from Henry's experience in Silent Hill, because as far as we know, Henry didn't really have that personal trauma that James has, and in addition to that, the first Silent Hill really was about the time of Silent Hill, so they really did have to go into the origins. But James is going to Silent Hill, and it seems completely different to him. Like in the first game, Silent Hill had a pristine presentation to it. It looks like a place that you would want to go and visit, maybe for a vacation, which is why Harry was there in the first place. But what made it creepy was the fact that, despite that, it was disturbingly empty, and with the fog and the monsters in the fog, that made it creepy. But James comes to Silent Hill, and the place honestly looks run down. And my theory as to why it looks like that to him as opposed to Harry is because, as he said, Silent Hill was a very special place for him and his wife. And now that his wife is gone, Silent Hill is now just a painful place for him to visit, a painful place for him to remember. And maybe that's why it doesn't look as pristine as it once was. The thing that made it special to him just isn't there anymore.
Good theory. I was always thinking that, like, we don't know how much time has passed between Silent Hill in the first game and Silent Hill now. So it's possible that the town was just left to ruin over that time.
Yeah, it also doesn't help that when you do come back to Silent Hill in Silent Hill 3, which I believe takes place after Silent Hill 2, it does look about the same as it does in Silent Hill 2. And it also doesn't help that later on in the series, they commit the cardinal sin of having a lot of James' personal horror, you know, the sexy nurses, the sexy demented nurses, and Pyramid Head appear for other characters, even though that stuff is supposed to be unique to James. But,
Yeah.
you know, developers who probably didn't play the bulk of the series just doing that and not really realizing that, hey, that's not how that's supposed to work. It also irritates me that they do that because they're also wasting the creative potential of Silent Hill by doing that. Like,
Yeah, it's such a shame how downhill this series went.
Like, you saw a little bit of personal horror for the third game as well, because some of that stuff, the monsters that were designed in Silent Hill 3, it was supposed to relate to the trauma and hardship that can come about as a, woman is moving into adulthood. And that was really creative. And there was some creative symbolism in Silent Hill 4, but after that, it just became about, oh, let's throw this monster in there because it's iconic to the franchise. Like, God, I wish Team Silent had continued making Silent Hill games the way they wanted to instead of the way Konami felt that they should have.
I completely agree with you.
Like, one concept that they had for another Silent Hill game was creating horror in the daylight, which I think would have been really interesting. Like, maybe as you're making your way through Silent Hill during the day, like, instead of the fog, you'd get, like, this heat haze, and a lot of what you would see would maybe be mirages or something. Like, and now you hear the radio coming up, so now we gotta go get that. It's like it's through here. It actually sounds like a radio this time. It sounded like a ringing bell in the first game, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
And this is also where you encounter our first enemy.
Look at that butt.
Alright, I got my 2x4.
Are you
It's
gonna
time
use
to
the
do-
chainsaw?
Should I?
Let's try it out.
Yeah, might as well. When in Rome.
Well, that was easy.
Hail to the king, baby.
And then he still got the 2x4 in the cutscene.
Alright, we used the chainsaw. That's the only time we're gonna do that, though.
All right, that's fair.
Because we do need to talk about the combat in this game.
Oh, and I was wrong earlier. I said I thought that his first weapon was a hammer,
Yeah.
but it is the wooden plank.
Yeah, it looks like a wooden plank with a nail in it.
This thing broken? What the? I'd better take it anyway. I might need it.
Was that supposed to be Mary's voice?
I think it was. So,
I'm
in
surprised
regards
I
to...
don't remember that.
So, in regards to the radio, a lot of people have wondered why. Let's look at the footsteps. That's kind of neat.
You know, bloody footprints.
Yeah. Anyway, a lot of people might wonder why radios blare static when the monsters get near you in a Silent Hill game. And my theory there is that it's actually the town just screwing with whoever is in there. Just trying to freak them out and let them know that, hey, I'm coming to get you. And right there with Mary talking in the radio, at this early stage in the game, you don't know if that's Mary talking to you, or if it's the town trying to lure James somewhere else.
The same thing with the letter, I guess.
Yeah, you never know.
Like, a lot of the events that happened in this game, you just never really know. Like, it's your best guess, the way you want to interpret it.
And that really is the beauty of Silent Hill 2. Like, there's so much... It's just got just the right amount of ambiguity to it, to where you're allowed to draw your own conclusions about it, but at the same time, there is just enough there to where it feels satisfying. Again, if you never played the first Silent Hill game, you might be wondering what is going on here. And if you played the first Silent Hill game, you know why the town is the way it is. But that also makes it more fun to play if you haven't played it, because then there's just a mystery to it. And even if you finish the game, that mystery is never really solved. Again, it's just one of the benefits of sort of detaching it from... Can I pick this up? No. Detaching it from that first game and just kind of doing its own thing, working in isolation, as opposed to, trying to do a direct narrative follow-up. Now, I stopped on a dime there to pick something up. Now, how did I know that was there? Well, that does bring us to one of the big gameplay innovations in Silent Hill 2, and that is when James is near something that he can pick up, he'll actually turn his head and look at it, which I gotta say is a great feature in a game like this. Because one of the problems with a lot of fixed camera angle games, and especially in a game like this where it's so hard to see everything, being able to just get an indication that there's something you need to pick up. Ah! That got me.
He was looking at it.
Nah. But yeah, that's a smart gameplay innovation. There are still some problems with it, namely that if it's something you need to interact with, James won't look at it. If it's an enemy, he'll look at it. But, like, there's one point in the game where you need to interact with a fridge that's on the floor, and it's in the dark, so you don't realize it's a fridge. So I remember us playing that game, and just going back and forth for hours until we looked up the facts and found that we were supposed to interact with that fridge.
Oh man, that sucked.
Yeah, so, yeah, we know now, but will you? Like, again, would have been very easy to fix. Just have James, look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I like that Resident Evil does, where they have the little bit of yellow on things that you can interact with.
Yeah. Or some kind of indicator. And I know a lot of people don't like that stuff, but just for the sake of pacing, I prefer having it rather than trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Something else on the floor here.
Yeah, how would you even see that if he wasn't looking at it?
That's probably why they included it in the first place.
Yeah, smart move.
Say what you will about Team Silent, but they were a pretty good team of developers. They just had different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the world would be more interesting if they had been given the right to continue.
I agree.
So just like in the first game, you have sections of the game where you're out exploring the town, but the main meat of the game are these sections where you go to explore a specific location, and the first part is going to be, the apartment building. And I definitely have some thoughts on this part, Steffi. Alright, so first of all, go over here. Get ourselves a map of the place. It's actually not required that you get the map, but my goodness is it helpful.
I do wish that the map in this game was as helpful as the map in Resident Evil.
Oh yeah.
Or like Resident Evil's, like, it'll color the rooms you've been in, and there'll be a certain color if you haven't gotten all the items in them, and then they change color once you have. It's so easy to lose track of where you've been, especially in a place like this where it's an apartment building and everything kind of looks the same.
Well, to be fair, Steffi, that was actually only invented for, I think, Resident Evil 7, maybe the Resident Evil 2 remake. That actually wasn't the case with Resident Evil games at the time.
Okay, I haven't played the original ones, so I wasn't sure, but
Did you ever watch
that was
my
a smart move that they did that.
Did you ever watch my stream of Resident Evil 2?
I did, and I did not realize that it didn't have the map get colored in.
Well, I didn't really focus on that. And I remember us having an issue with this part too, because with this part in particular, you can't look at your map and it's dark, so you're basically just wandering around in the dark for the first part.
Remember this.
But
There's
now
a
I
certain
know.
item you need to get.
Yeah, and it's right here.
We
And look.
missed that the first time.
Yeah, and look at those lighting effects, dude. Look at how the shadow gets bigger as you approach that light source. I mean, dude, this is before Doom 3. That is some damn impressive lighting. Ah! Alright, I always liked a girl with legs, but give me a break. Gongala!
And that's how many hits they take versus the chainsaw.
Yeah, so I gotta be honest, while Silent Hill 2 is a great game, I wouldn't say the gameplay itself is particularly strong. And I've already commented on the fixed camera angles and the tank controls, which, given that it's mostly adjustable, I would have preferred just being able to use a dual analog setup. and that way you can use full analog controls. So the controls mostly come off as sluggish, and the camera comes off as sloppy as opposed to dynamic. And then you have the combat, which is just pretty bad. Like in Resident Evil, you hold the R button, and you use one button to swing. So obviously the windup is big, so there's that to consider. But you notice how James will sometimes swing side to side, and other times he'll just bring it straight down. I have no idea how to make him do either. Like, he just kind of seems to do it on his own. And it just makes the combat feel really sloppy and unsatisfying as well. Like, it's also not really that satisfying to hit enemies in this game, even with the chainsaw. I just think back to Resident Evil, and while combat is discouraged in that game because, you know, you don't want to be wasting your resources, it's still fun to shoot at the zombies. I mean, there's still some fun to be had with combat in Resident Evil, but here, it's just unsatisfying and honestly not very well done to begin with. And I know a lot of people will make the argument that James is an everyman, he's not supposed to be tough and not a fighter. It doesn't take a genius to know how to brain something. Like, either I tap the button to swing it, or I hold the button to bring it straight down. Which I would definitely like to do with these things, because they just crawl around. Bring it straight down. Thank you, James. Why didn't you... Nah.
Did he kick it?
Yes. Yes, he did.
How'd you make him do that?
I don't know. Handgun bullets for a weapon I don't have yet. Oh, man, talk about... Oh, wait, I made that mess. Ugh. And one other thing that I'm sure people are going to comment on, you actually do have the option to play this game with full analog controls. But this is one of the first games where I realized that it's actually ill-advised to play a game that uses shifting camera angles like that. Because, like, say if I were to walk into this room and I was using that system, James probably would have spazzed out all over the place because suddenly the input had been flopped. So yeah, I really do not like the combat in this game, and that's kind of a problem because, you know, that's such a big part of the game too.
Hopefully that's something they fix in the remake.
Oh, I'm hoping they do. I also hope that they don't go too far with it either. I swear to lifeson, Steffi, if I play that Silent Hill 2 remake and I find that they put a frickin' parry mechanic in the game, I am going to lose it.
You're referencing Resident Evil 4, aren't you?
Really, just parry mechanics in general. Like, they just kind of overstayed their welcome. Seems like they have to be in every game. And yeah, I did hate the parry in Resident Evil 4 as well. Really, I did like the Resident Evil 4 remake, period. Never understood why people loved it so much. Those are some really cool lighting effects, though.
They are.
How about you kick him again? Want to do that?
No, that would be helpful.
Did he just kill me?
Yes.
I wasn't even thinking about that.
You didn't save, did you?
I did not. Let's see where continue drops us. Back at the well.
Well, well, well.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a way for me to exit back to the main menu, so I think I just kind of screwed us there, Steffi. Isn't that fun?
I mean, it wasn't really you. It was James not striking down when he should have.
Uh, we only have about 7 minutes left on the stream, Steffi, so why don't we just go ahead and call it here? Besides, we don't want to show them any of the juicy stuff either, do ya? Especially with the remake coming out.
True.
Because
So-
people are going to be experiencing this game here soon, so
Definitely check out this game. I recommend the original, but being as that it's hard to find, hopefully the remake will do it justice.
yeah, one can only hope, Steffi. Like, really, Silent Hill 2 is one of those rare cases for me when it comes to a game, because mechanically speaking, Silent Hill 2 is honestly pretty bad. The movement is very sluggish. The camera feels more sloppy than dynamic. The melee combat is lousy, as you saw earlier. And I think that's the first time I ever died in a Silent Hill 2 game as well. Isn't that crazy? The shooting is unsatisfying. I mean, the only good thing about this game is that it's good at leading you through the town of Silent Hill. But even that, it stumbles with at times. But apart from that, everything else about Silent Hill 2 is just fantastic. The story is great. The characters are amazing. The graphics, artistically brilliant, symbolically inclined. The difficulty, it's pretty well balanced for the most part. It's like, if you die too much, you can always switch it down to easy. And also make the puzzles easier if you want to. And it is a pretty lengthy adventure, too. I think you can get about 6 or 8 hours out of this game. And there is some replay value in it, too. Because as we said, when you complete the game, you know more than when you started. And that recontextualizes everything you see. So there is value in playing it a second time. Especially if you find that chainsaw, eh, Steph? I should have been using that from the get-go.
And then maybe you wouldn't have died.
Yeah. But yeah, Silent Hill 2, I still recommend it. It's one of those games, it's the only game I can think of that is good despite its gameplay, not because of it. So, like, if it's good enough to overcome less than satisfactory gameplay, it must be amazing in regards to everything else, and I would definitely say that is the case. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for Silent Hill 2. Thank you for joining me, Steffi. I hope you had fun playing this with me. I'm sorry I screwed up.
It happened.
Yeah, I think we gave people a general idea of the vibe of Silent Hill 2 anyway, so I think we're good on that front. But I'm going to play the Silent Hill 2 remake, and once I play a little bit of it, and if I feel it's worth playing, I'll let you know, and we'll start getting on Discord to play it together. How about that?
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that.
Haha, you and me both. But anyway, that's going to do it for tonight, guys. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please be sure to like and subscribe. I do these videos every week, typically at Saturday at 8. I typically try to go live, but, you know, with the holidays coming, I'm probably going to be doing more recordings than I usually do, but I will try to go live as much as possible. Steffi will sometimes be joining me for some of them. Steffi has also been talking about doing some of her own content too, so be on the lookout for that as well. And yeah, if there's a game you think you would like to see me try and explain, examine, leave it in the comments. And if it's something I feel is worth playing, I'll add it to the list. But that's going to do it for tonight, guys. Hope you all have a good week and take care.
Bye.